at the time with the trade, but I believe Indy got the better.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Because they get a guy that's going to turn 26, I think, in a couple of days. They got him for 3 more years at $21 million a year. And you look at his body skill, he looks like a different player. He looked like he had a little soft. He got himself in shape. He's a damn good two-way player. So it's Paul George, so don't get me wrong.
What's up, my dudes and duets? Welcome to another episode of Sportsline. Man, I'm so excited. We've officially started the NBA playoffs, and my Pacers already got this dub, baby. Yeah, the Thunder also got their wins. I'm not too mad at Paul George, but now that the playoffs have started, we've seen what Oladipo can do and we've seen what Paul George can do. Now we got to figure out which one is the better athlete. Right now, I just woke up and I decided to weigh myself, and I'm weighing 176 pounds. And the body weight that I want to be at ultimately is 174 pounds, but I also want to maintain my performance, and these two guys are going to be a good comparison as to who I want to be like by the end of the summer. So now looking at it, got the old school Paul George jersey. If you're a real one, you used to have this, because I still appreciate what he did for the Pacers, but that's not what this is about. This is about Victor Oladipo versus Paul George. Now, the main things that we need to look with these athletes. So from a performance standpoint, and when you look at the points that they average, they both average around the same amount of points. Their height, Paul George is a little bit taller, being 6'9", he weighs 220 pounds, versus Oladipo, who's 6'4", weighing 210 pounds. But now we're going to look at their numbers. All right, let's first start off with Paul George. Man, when the Pacers drafted Paul George, I was one of the most excited individuals. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I'm lying. I was actually not happy about it, because Paul George used to have another teammate named Danny Granger. Finally gave Paul George a chance, and Frank Vogel at the time gave him a shot. I think he got like an 8-point prospect coming out. They said that he was the closest thing to a player since T-Mac.
Because I love it, and you know the MVP stuff. That's for everybody else. Oh my goodness! What'd you think of that one there, Tracy? You're not talking to me, and I'm missing the game.
Well, you know, it's a fast break to himself, and he was the only one to do it. What's coming? Look at.
That's the type of expectations that people have for Paul George. Now, if you look at Victor Oladipo, his case is a little bit different. Now, when it comes to Victor Oladipo, when he was coming out from Indiana, a lot of people were just like, yeah, the prototypical college basketball player that is very good sound in terms of fundamentals, but in terms of how they looked at him for his offensive games, a lot of people really didn't believe that much in him. And so he ended up going number 2 to the Orlando Magic, and that's when he started actually balling out. But when you actually look at these two guys' career, the area that you really have to look at is you have to look at their performance on the courts. So the thing that separates these two guys on the basketball court is that one is more of a power forward and the other one is more of a guard. Now, in regards to Paul George, watching him all the years in Indiana, he's a powerful scorer as soon as he got into his own. And this guy was still growing, so he was starting to fulfill that T-Mac prophecy.
And one here for Paul George. George attacks. That was pretty explosive. That might be the definition of explosive.
If you don't know much about Tracy McGrady, he's one of the greatest scorers of all time, and he was a dynamic player. He was a tall guy that could move like a point guard, and man, he had handles, he could dunk, he could shoot threes, and that's what Paul George started becoming into it. Now, on the other side, Victor Oladipo was starting to look more like a guard, just seeming like somebody that could probably be on the supporting cast. So where it got really interesting for Oladipo is when he got traded to the Thunder. So when he went to the Thunder, he had to play alongside Russell Westbrook. This is on the heels of Kevin Durant leaving Oklahoma City Thunder to go to the Golden State Warriors to make a super team. So now Victor Oladipo was playing alongside Russell Westbrook, trying to play alongside another superstar. And with the Magic, he was playing along some, not very good players, and he was scoring a lot of points, and he was slowly increasing his average, and he had gone, but he had to diminish it. It went diminished a little bit just because he was playing alongside Russell Westbrook, Brody, who always needs the ball. On the other side, during this whole time, all Paul George had done is he had taken over the reins as Danny Granger, who was the star player for the Pacers when Paul George first got there, and now it was all up to Paul George, and Paul George was going toe-to-toe with LeBron every single playoff, back-to-back. You had Roy Hibbert with the verticality, and then you also had the infamous Lance Stephenson.
The Indiana Pacers, including this, blowing in the ear of LeBron James. And James' reaction, he can't believe it.
We can all go back and forth, to it. And this season is the one that marked the comparison between these two players. Now, the thing with both of these players is that they both hit the gym hard. If you look at Paul George working out, he's been working out with LeBron before. And during his time in the Eastern Conference, he used to always work out with LeBron because he was planning to challenge him later on in the future. And that's a smart way. You want to work out with people that are far advanced, more advanced than you, so that you can learn from them. Now, Oladipo, on the other hand, he was also hitting the gym, but a lot of people weren't seeing it because they weren't seeing him quite as a superstar. Now, where this becomes very interesting is if you look at just how they compare side to side. The way Paul George is able to jump, how lanky he is, you would think that he would be the one that would take the upper hand when it comes to driving. But it's actually Oladipo who's always going to the basket.
After 9 straight home losses,
Oladipo! Victor Oladipo on a beautiful move to the rim off the spin and a splash.
That's why
that was a big knock on him coming into the league. Coming into the league, they didn't look at him as an offensive player. They said he was just an athlete, and maybe it might translate over to his defense. The thing about Victor Oladipo is the way that he drives to the basket, and how he trained that is by working on coordination. I was looking at some of the training that he does. Again, a lot of hand-eye coordination stuff, a lot of change of direction type of stuff, because if you're a basketball player and you want to be really effective, it's important to hit the gym just like Paul George has been hitting the gym, but you also got to make sure that you're working on things that will separate you from the competition. And don't get it twisted, I'm not saying that I would never want to play like Paul George. Paul George is one of my favorite players for so many years, and I still respect him a great deal. It's just the way Victor Oladipo has been able to attack the basket this season is a testament to just how hard he's been working out in the gym. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, they're both really good players. Got Paul George, still a really good player, can hit a bunch of threes. You got Oladipo, who can drive to the rim and be a force to reckon with on a defensive end. But I'm talking endlessly about it. So now we actually really got to get to as to what separates these two players. What separates them is really how Victor Oladipo can sing.
There's nothing more important to me, and I'm singing this song to you.
That's what makes him so good. Nah, I'm just kidding. So what actually really separates them, what makes them so special, is the way that they play with their teammates. So with Paul George, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is Danny Granger was around, so he couldn't necessarily take the reins. Once he became the undisputed leader of the Pacers were a much better team, and they were able to challenge LeBron even in the years in Miami. If you look at Victor Oladipo, when he was with the Magic, that's when he also was starting to get that superstar type of mentality where he has to take all the shots, but the Magic weren't that good a team, so that when he got traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, because he was playing along Russell Westbrook, who was more established at the time, he had to take a seat back, and you could tell just by his emotions, he wasn't necessarily feeling that place. And so ever since he's been in Indiana, he's actually really taken that, and he's the main guy, the head honcho, and that's what really separates him. Versus Paul George, he tends to dial back a little bit and just kind of let his teammates take over, but it's not really knocking Paul George too much. He likes to play that backseat role, but ultimately that's what's going to separate these two players. If you look at Victor Oladipo, he's ready to take that superstar mentality and take it in the clutch game, whereas Paul George is ready to play second fiddle but still be very productive. So that's why I choose Victor Oladipo over the others. What about you guys? Which one would you guys pick? Put it in the comments below, and I'll be glad to debate with you guys over it. And also, you can actually reach me on Twitter at SportsEye, and I'll be glad to talk with you about this discussion, and you'll be readily seeing me talk about the Pacers. That does it for me here on SportsEye. I'll catch you next time as we keep talking about more basketball and other ways to improve our strength training. Thanks for checking